Everybody. There might be a couple other people who hop on, but welcome. Thank you for sharing a little bit of your Wednesday evening. So we're going to get started. So I think Jeff is here and Sylvia is here and I am here. I'm Asia and I know all of you personally. So that's awesome. But we might get a couple of other people on as well. So we're just here today to talk a little bit about some personal finance basics and answer some questions. I got some really great questions in the signups, but also if you have any particular questions that you're curious about, there will be plenty of time at the end for us to talk about all of that stuff. But I'll also try and address some things as we go along. Anything anybody wants to just put out there before we get started? All right. Okie dokie. So I'm going to keep the chat open. Everybody can see me okay and hear me all good. Awesome. Thanks, Kate. And yeah, so like before we dive in, let's just take a quick moment to take a deep breath, because talking about money can be a little stressful. And I want to recognize that. But with all that said, you are totally awesome for being here, because talking about money is difficult. So yay for you. Give yourself a pat on the back. High five your dog or cat or pillow, plush friend, whatever. And this is, we're like in a safe, non-judgmental space here. So I appreciate your honesty and sharing yourself and all of that. So one of the things that I like to do is just have a couple of reflection questions, just to kind of be honest with yourself about how you think about money. So I know we're not all on video. I will raise my hand. Kate, I see you, so you can raise your hand, and raise your hand if when you think about money, you feel angry or resentful, stressed or anxious, excited or joyful, also me. Sometimes. Were you raised with a positive view of money? All right. Do you find it difficult to talk about money with other people? Yeah. Do you feel lost when it comes to personal finance? Love your enthusiastic nodding. It's even better than the hand raise. Do you feel you have the skills, the knowledge, and or tools to manage your money effectively? All right. Well, we're going to work on some of that today for sure. So the main thing is money is not black and white. There is the practical side of money, and it should feel like, I think there's a lot of this feeling of money should seem more obvious than it does, because it is numbers and things like that. But it's also, it impacts everything that we do, our goals, our dreams, our relationships, the way that we perceive ourselves and our own self-worth. So that's a lot to carry with something that feels like it should just be so objective, right? And so it does, we can feel angry about it, resentful, stressed out about it, but we can also feel excited about it. Money can provide us safety and stability and security. And so again, that's just so much to put on money. And I think, there's this feeling of one day we'll wake up and it will all just make sense. And unfortunately, that never happens. So we have to take it into our own hands to move forward and learn what we need to learn in order to live the life that we want and not let money impede that, but instead let money be a tool to help us get there. And because so many of us didn't grow up learning about money in a totally effective way, whether that's in our homes or at school, it's just not something that we learn a lot about. And then, we're thrust into the world and expected to understand it. Somehow, like, there's this huge disconnect. And so that's one of the reasons that I do the work that I do, because I feel like I think it sucks when money holds us back instead of letting us be free. So so I'm all about, like, let's get on the same page with our financial situation, with how we feel about it, but also how we want to feel about it and how can we get from point A to point B. And transition some of those more negative feelings into more positive, or at least neutral feelings. So so consider that as well. So just a little bit about me. I have been primarily self-employed, at least in part, since I graduated from college. And that has taken many forms. I've worked as a chef, like a private chef. I've worked also in nonprofits and startups, and some established businesses, but I've also worked as a coach in different ways. And I've also had little side businesses that I've created and tried things out. So so I've really had to figure out how to manage my money when I was, and I also lived in New York City. And so when I was just to try and make all of that stuff work, I really had to learn how to deal with money, and in a way that would allow me to live the life that I wanted, do the work that I wanted to do, and move forward that way. And so that's been really educational for me, but also I've worked in operations and human resources and admin roles, managing offices and things like that. So I've learned a lot about paychecks and benefits and all this stuff that kind of comes with that side of finance as well. And then I'm just also kind of nerd out about personal finance related stuff. So so those are things that have got me to this place. And again, my goal ultimately is just to help people understand and communicate about money more effectively and with less stress and tension, hopefully, because it does impact so many aspects of our lives. All right, moving on. Come on now. There we go. So again, could money be more than just the feelings we attach to it? It is excitement and possibility. It is a tool. It can be a friend. So the more that we can see money that way, the more positive our relationship can be with it. And it could be, one of the things that I really believe in is let's cut the BS around money being such a sensitive subject, a taboo, things we can't talk about, because the less we talk about these things, we hold ourselves and everybody else back. And so you see that a lot more being talked about in the workplace, particularly among women, talking about what they are paid, but also so that I love that conversation that's happening, because I think the more that we can just get out there and talk about it, because it is such a fact of life, we can't, we're not going to get better at it if we don't practice having those conversations. This is a quote I really love a lot. Money is only a tool. It will take you wherever you wish, but it will not replace you as the driver. And what I love so much about that is that, I think sometimes it's easy to think, oh, well, if I just had, X amount of money, or if I won the lottery, or, X, my debt was all wiped out, it would, my life would be better. And maybe in some ways there's some truth to that. But if you don't take control of the situation, whatever that situation is, you could have all the money that there is, but still be bad about how you use it. So, so with that in mind, we're going to talk a little bit about debt. Looking at what past you has left you with. And sometimes we're going to talk in a second about good and bad debt, but just a couple of things to help you feel less alone potentially, or a little bit scared. Nearly half of Americans carry credit card or consumer debt. And the US student loan debt is over $1 trillion. So that is redonkulous, first of all. And I'm really hoping that some future administrations can help us with that student loan debt situation, and also just the way education is handled from a financial situation moving forward. But for now, that is the number that we're looking at. And you can also see that there's some other kinds of debt that we're looking at: mortgages, audit, car loans, things of that nature. There's also other kinds of debt like personal loans and medical debt and things like that. So, when you're thinking about debt, maybe you've been burned by past decisions like, oh, I wish I hadn't done that shopping spree on my credit card when I was 24, and it seemed like such a good idea, and I'm still paying for that now. Or, how, like, if you have credit card debt or other debt, like how does that make you feel about money? Does that make you feel worse about it? Does it make you feel more like, well, I'm always going to have debt, this is just a fact of life? So it's being in debt is just, I think that's part of it. It's like being in debt is so widely accepted in the United States that it feels like everybody's in debt and it's just part of how we have to live our lives. And I think to a certain extent, one of the things that is very challenging is that the cost of living in lots of places has risen dramatically. And that's been disproportionate to our income levels. And so on some level, we are, in a big picture sense, living above our means. And this is where, like, I want someone to, because I don't know that it's going to be me necessarily, I want someone to get out there and like go like do the whole like lobbying on the positive end of things to just like change the way the system works, because it's all about, like, at the risk of sounding like too, I don't know, I don't mind being socialist, but like capitalism's gone a bit far, I think. So so much of how we're spending money is really not to our own benefit, and it's to benefit a very few people. And that is pretty shitty. I'm just going to say that. But I don't want to dwell there. So, taking out loans for higher education is very common. And also it's still really widely assumed that buying your own home is automatically a good investment. And I know I had several people comment about wanting to save to purchase a home or think about that as a possibility. And so we are going to talk about that a little bit more too. But it's not automatically a good investment depending on your situation. So by putting yourself in debt, you are taking control of your finances away from yourself. And so that is the big thing that I want you to think about, is that the more debt you can get out of your life, and just eliminating debt in your life is going to be giving you more control, putting you more in that driver's seat of your finances. So bad debt is generally, like when we talk about bad debt, that's generally referred to as credit card debt, car loans, and personal loans, whereas good debt is mortgages, student loans. I sort of have some issue with this because I think it gives us the wrong impression, and anybody who's had really high student loans will probably tell you that it doesn't feel like good debt. And not all credit card debt is necessarily bad. So I think it's a very easy way to look at those two things, but I don't think it's necessarily the only way to approach looking at those two. And also same with mortgages. Again, buying your own home is not always a good investment if what you're paying is more than you can afford, if your interest rate is, if the kind of mortgage that you have is not to your advantage, but is to the bank's advantage. I mean, they're always going to be somewhat to the bank's advantage, but there are different kinds of mortgages. So there's some gray area in that bad and good debt spot. But one little thing on here that I always like to share is that one thing you can do is, if you do have credit cards and you have credit card debt, but your credit score is okay, or you've been really good about paying your interest, or your paying your payments regularly, and maybe more than what your minimum payments are, you can call your credit card company and request that your interest rates get lowered. And typically you can do this every 6 months or so. And even if you don't have much credit card debt, or you always pay your credit cards off every month, you can still request this, and it doesn't, what's the harm in it? It'll just take you a few minutes on the phone to do that. And I think it's a really great way to help lower any debt that you have, because you're going to be paying less interest. And so that's a little pro tip there. I know Sylvia has done that with some success, so yay. So we're gonna move on. So this, another one, when we're stressed about our finances, it's because we're not sure our money decisions are aligned with the life we want to be living. And again, we're going to talk about savings now. And so this is where I feel like there's so much opportunity that we're collectively not taking advantage of. And so whether that is, and so again, I had a bunch of people who were interested in general savings, emergency savings, and saving for something specific. So, so savings is all about how you're looking out for future you. So in my coaching work, I talk about you now, future you, and past you. So even though that's all you, there's looking at it in a couple of different ways. And so, so when you're looking out for future you, there are lots of ways that you can do this. And so one of the things I love about savings is that you can make you can create savings accounts for whatever you want. It's all about the things that are important priorities to you, that align with your values and your goals. Making sure that your savings are specific and meaningful is a sure way to make it easier for you to see it and to prioritize it. And ultimately, saving money is all about giving your money a job. So when you've got money that's coming in from work or other income, you have a choice of how you want to spend that money. So so sometimes it's like, oh, well, of course I have to pay my bills and my rent or my mortgage and all these different things. Yes, but also what are the other things that you want to do? And I think a lot of people, and I've been in this place myself, the money shows up on my bank account, and because I've been self-employed primarily, I will sometimes like go stretches with not a lot of money, and then stretches where all my checks come in and it's like, whoo, I'm rich, let's go. And it's really easy to take those moments and forget about these other priorities. So, so the kinds of things we might be saving for are like our emergency or oh shit funds. For some people, it's more of a peace of mind fund. So maybe there's money in other places, but you want to have a peace of mind fund. So you can think about that emergency fund as different kinds of things. And it could also be about specific goals for future spending. So I have actually like lots of savings accounts. And what I have those because I can call them really specific things. It makes it very clear if I'm about to like go on a trip or something, or I'm getting ready to book travel. It's like, all right, I've got all the money I need in my travel account. It's there, yay. Or when I'm getting ready to hit the ground on a trip, I know I've got a certain amount of money that I've already got set aside. Specifically for that. And it just makes it really easy when the time comes to spend the money to know what I have available and that I've already thought about it. And so I think things that we forget a lot about are like gifts. So having a savings account just for giving, so whether that is charitable giving or giving gifts for special occasions and birthdays and holidays and things like that. Other things are like wardrobe and like almost anything, like it could be like stuff for your home. I have an account that's specifically for like home related expenses. So if you have to like call the plumber or things like, especially stuff that doesn't come up all the time. So those are things like that. And then similarly with the ongoing expenses, things that you're going to have to spend money on at some point. So car maintenance, home care, fund. So that might just be like your allowance, if you want to call it that. So, here's the stuff I get to spend doing, going out to eat or, going, I don't know, whatever you do for fun, go bowling. I don't know what people do. Things for your pets. So, some people do have pet insurance, but also there might be ongoing expenses related to your pet, or just things that you're like, I love to get my dog a new outfit every season. I don't know, that kind of thing. So, so think about like when you're kind of considering these different savings accounts and different things to save for, think about the year altogether. I also pay my car insurance semi-annually, so I am saving money for that every month, as opposed to, oh, Geico has billed me and now I have to come up with all the money for that. So other categories to consider are hobbies. So especially if you have any hobbies that do require regular gear or lessons or anything like that, you might consider having something for hobbies. Self-care. So I've had a client who, she was like, you know, it's really important to me that I get a massage every couple months, or I, you know, like get a nice haircut. And she's like, those things make me feel really good. I don't spend money on this other stuff. Like, that's something that I really want to make sure I put money aside for. So she has a self-care fund. And personal growth might be another one. And so that could be so many things. That could still be hobbies, but it could be something else. So, so thinking about the different kinds of savings accounts, or things you might consider saving for, and how you want to see those. Because I think if we just have one big savings account, that can be challenging, because it's like, what is that for? And I find that a lot with clients. It's like, well, I have this much money in savings, but it's my emergency account. It's if I just need money for a trip, like, it's just all in there. And so creating more clarity will allow you to be able to focus more on those goals that you have, that vision that you have for your life. So whether that is 1 year from now, 5 years from now, or 10 years from now, you can create goals for all sorts of things. And, you know, going back for a second to the emergency fund, one of the things that I didn't put on here, but that I think is like a pretty harrowing fact, is that over half of Americans, or about half of Americans, would have trouble finding $400 for an emergency. 400, which is not a lot of money, but that could be your tire needs replacing on your car, you know, an unexpected emergency room visit, things like that, where the, you know, the money, they want the money now, right? So that's another reason why an emergency fund can be really important. And I think one of the questions I get all the time about emergency funds is how much should be in there. The rule of thumb is 3 to 6 months worth of necessary expenses. So this is not like, here's what I spend in a month. Here, it's not necessarily my income for 3 months. It is necessary expenses. So necessary expenses in this case would be like rent or mortgage payments, utility bills, you know, you have to pay for, any like insurance premiums, things that you definitely have to pay for every month. You know, the minimum amount of like food and things like that that you need to get through the month. And anything else that is necessary for your life, gas, car payments, debt payments, things like that. So whatever that amount is, multiply it by at least 3, and that should be the minimum that you want to see in your emergency account. And for a lot of us, it can take a while to get to that point, especially if we're not starting from having very much in there. So find a number that feels comfortable for you. And some people, 3 months is not enough, because either their income is really inconsistent, or they know there's going to be some shifting in their future, and so they want to have more saved. You find a number that feels comfortable for you, but 3 months is a really good amount of time. Especially depends on like where you live and like what fields you work in, because if you get laid off, or, you know, decide to leave your job for some reason, then having that money will make that a little bit easier, hopefully. So with the other things with savings accounts and banking in general is like, don't use a bank that charges you fees, okay? Like the big banks like Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and Chase often will charge you fees for the most ridiculous things. You should not be charged fees to keep your money safe, okay? So if they're charging you to just have an account open, find a different account. Call them and see if there's a different option, or find a bank that doesn't charge you those fees. It's hard to find a bank that doesn't charge you overdraft fees, but lots of banks will, if that's an area of concern for you, allow you to link a savings account within the same bank that they will take money out of if there's ever an overdraft issue, and then they don't charge you money for that. If you don't know if you're being charged fees, please make this like a priority, like as soon as possible, because again, you should not be paying money to just keep your money parked in a bank account. Open at least one high yield savings account. So right now, the Fed is lowering interest rates, which has an impact on these high yield savings accounts. So if you have like a regular savings account with one of these big banks, you are probably getting like an interest rate of 0.02 or so percent annually, which is basically no money. That's not even keeping up with inflation. So a high yield savings account will, right now the rates are relatively speaking, they're kind of low. They're like around 1.5 to 1.75%, but earlier this year they were 2% and higher, which will at least keep you up with inflation. And it's really nice to just see this kind of like free money trickling in, especially as you consider compound interest, which basically means that you're earning interest on your interest. So that's what you want for any money that you are not touching regularly specifically, but it could be. So like I use Ally Bank for my high yield savings accounts. This is where I have like, I don't know, 6 or 7 different savings accounts. And they, you know, again, every bank that's doing these high yield savings accounts has been lowering their rates, but they will go back up. So you're not going to do better putting them in, you know, Chase's regular savings account. The only way you can do any better is by having a CD, certificate of deposit. And even those rates are not wonderful. They're just locked in for a certain amount of time. And that's only really beneficial if you are parking your money for a year or more. So then the other pro tip on savings is automate. So this is especially great if you have predictable income, so you know when you're getting paid and how much you're getting paid. You can just have like, you know, you're getting direct deposit on Friday, so you can just automate all your transfers to whatever accounts you want to go. So that way you don't even have to think about moving the money to these different accounts, and instead you lose a little bit of that sort of sex appeal, if you will, of all the money in your checking account. And so this just automates everything. So you might already do some of this, or you might even do it for some bills where, you know, certain bills are auto paid, whether that's on a credit card or out of the bank account. You can do that for your savings as well. And that's a really great way to ensure that money is going to your savings account all the time. You can also consider doing this for an even small amount of money. In the times where I've had super inconsistent income, I felt like, well, I know that every week I can at least put like $10 in my savings account. So I just always had that. And then on, you know, the weeks and the months I had more to put in there, I would just manually do that. So even if it's just a small amount of money, anything you put in will begin to grow, especially if you have it in a high yield savings account. All right. Water time. Okay. So you must gain control over your money, or the lack of it will forever control you. So we're going to talk a little bit about budgeting, which I think for some people, they get really into it, and other people, they're just like, budgeting sounds gross and I don't want to do it, period. We're going to talk about it. So, Kate, because I can see your face, do you budget? Sometimes. All right. So budgets can totally be helpful depending on how you approach it, right? So one of the things that, you know, like if we think about it like a diet where it's like, oh, well, you know, in order to lose 10 pounds, I've got to eat kale for every meal, and like, that's it. Then budgeting is going to suck. And so is dieting. Budgeting is not a diet. Okay. So it's really about how you empower yourself and your money to do the things that you want it to do. So we're looking at this, like 80% of US employees live paycheck to paycheck. That is a lot. That's a lot of us living paycheck to paycheck. And part of the reason for that is because we are not making plans for our money ahead of time. We are just getting the money and then just dealing with it in the moment. So the budgeting is where past you now, and future you work together. There's lots of budgeting apps and books and methods, and you really have to find one that works well for you. But you have to know where you're starting from too. So I really would challenge you, if you aren't already using an app like Mint that will track your expenses. You can also do it manually, but Mint is great because you can link all your bank accounts to it and your credit cards and things like that. And so it will automatically track your expenses and your income. But you can certainly do it old school with a like Excel spreadsheet or piece of paper. But what you start to see as you track your expenses and you start to think about budgeting is what your financial reality is against what you want your future to look like. And also challenging the assumptions that you have, because I've certainly worked with clients who have been on both sides of the spectrum where they have had their expenses are higher than the income that they make each month. And then once they really see that, then it's like, oh, okay, that really sucks. I get why I feel so financially stressed, is because I don't have enough money for all the things that I spend money on. And also people on the other side where they haven't done this work of tracking their expenses and they're afraid of running out of money and they actually are doing fine, but they just didn't have the clarity. So the first step of budgeting is really about creating clarity around what your expenses are, what your necessary expenses are. If there's things that are being automatically charged, like subscriptions and things like that, that you don't actually use or want, and seeing if there's any areas that are not matching up with what your values and your goals are. So ultimately, like what I think about budgeting is like, it's great. It's an awesome opportunity to practice intention and consistency around your decisions. It's about saying yes to future you and the goals of you now and of future you. So I know it's like a lot of information, but budgeting is like a really good tool. So there's a couple of different starting areas. So I think the easiest one to implement, or at least to kind of frame, is the 50-30-20. So 50% of your monthly money is going towards needs. So these are necessary expenses and debt repayments, things like that. 30% is wants. So so that could be anything that is not a need, but is a thing that you either know you're regularly going to be spending money on, or is just not necessary, but it's a thing that you do. So like, for example, going out to eat or getting takeout or something like that may not be a need, but it might be a want. So it would fall there. For some people, therapy might be a need or it might be a want. So it can vary from person to person. And then 20%, that last 20% is about savings. So saving 20%, and that would also include potentially on you like retirement contributions, but at least it would include just saving in general. And that could include all the savings that you have in mind, not just emergency savings. So that is a very simple approach, this 50-30-20. For some of us, if you live in a very expensive city, 50% on needs might be a bit low. So when I lived in New York City, certainly my needs category was closer to 65 to 75%. And that's rough. So it just means all the other things have to get adjusted. So tomorrow I will be sending out some resources, and there will be some links for different budgeting tools and ideas that you can look at. But I do like that 50-30-20 just as a starting point, because as you track your expenses, you can see if like where everything matches up. All right, so then we've got Beyonce. I don't think there's more that needs to be said other than this. We're going to talk about investing for like 3 minutes. And Beyonce's here because like she's going to represent in this image the sexy side of money, which is what investing I think is. There's like scandals, there's movies and books and all sorts of fun stuff around investing. I also think that investing is oftentimes felt like this area of like, oh, in order to be good about my money and smart about money, I need to be investing. Yes, and also no. A lot of people leap into investing too quickly, and there's also tons of different kinds of investing. So when we talk about retirement, we often say saving for retirement, but you are actually investing it if you have your retirement money in any of these types of accounts. There's also just investment funds that you can like that you can partake in. So some of those types of funds are mutual funds, ETFs, and index funds. And then there's stocks and bonds and options and futures. I mean, this just goes on and on. Cryptocurrency, annuities, and bank products. So all of these bank products for investing would be like CDs, like I mentioned before. Money market accounts would also be a type of investing. So, and essentially, even when you have a savings account, it's kind of an investment, except that it's less volatile because they give you interest. So anyway, so one of the things I'm just gonna like try to impress upon you today around investing is that investing is a mindset. Everything you do with your money is an investment. I know it's not necessarily retirement account or investment account or some sort of sexy like NASDAQ, you know, S&P 500, all these like weird things that you're like, I don't know what it means, but I'm investing it. Everything you do with your money is an investment. And so backtrack to that. That being said, if you think you're ready to invest, here's what you need to, where you need to be if you're ready to invest. So if you've got these bases covered, then go have fun. So if you have no consumer debt, so by that I mean no credit card debt, no personal loans, no like loans to the hospital, things like that. Some student debt would be okay, depending on how much you have, what your interest rates are, and if you're able to meet more than the minimum payments on that student debt. If you have a mortgage, that's okay. You can still invest if you have a mortgage. So also your retirement contributions should be maxed out because again, retirement, contributing to your retirement account is a type of investing. If you work in a job where you have a 401k, you should be, and if there's any matching, you should be doing at least what you can do to max out the company match. I've never been in that situation and I am enviable of all those who have. There's lots of different kinds of retirement accounts you can set up, and that will be mentioned in the resources that I send out as well. That will give you some more things to read on types of retirement accounts if you don't have one already set up. If you do have a 401k through your work, you can also still set up things like a Roth IRA, and there's other kinds of accounts that you can set up if you have one through your work. There are, for some of these accounts, income limits. So if you make over a certain amount, certain types of accounts you don't qualify for, but that is a different solvable problem. So the main reason that you want to focus on maxing out your retirement accounts first is that retirement accounts are tax advantaged. So either you are investing in your retirement pre-tax, so if they're being taken out of your paycheck ahead of your money, or you are paying them post-tax, which means that like with a Roth IRA, you are putting money in after you've gotten paid. So essentially you've already paid tax on the money. So when you go to take it out at retirement, you don't have to pay taxes on it. So if you have like a 401k through your job, for example, generally those types of accounts, you do have to pay taxes when you withdraw the money in retirement. So pros and cons to these different kinds of accounts, but again, one of the reasons you want to focus on maxing out your retirement contributions means that you are already on the right track for retirement, and you've got more money that you can then put towards more risky investments. Emergency fund, we've already talked about this, but if you don't have your emergency fund covered, you really shouldn't be investing money. That would really be the first one. I would say I kind of talked about these out of order, but getting your emergency fund and or your debt situation handled before really starting to contribute. There's different schools of thoughts about what order to do these things in, and I can certainly answer any questions that you might have about that. But yes, so emergency fund, retirement account, retirement contributions, and no consumer debt. So that's how you know that you are ready to invest. So again, everything you choose to do with your money is an investment. All right, so now time for questions. And I see that Kate already put a question in here. So Kate asked, I need to redo my budget. Do I need to redo my budget since I moved? Is Mint the best tool for this? I'm just gonna, Kate, do you wanna, can you just, do you wanna, I'm gonna unmute you. Just talk it out.
All the things.
Okay, so Mint is a great tool. It's not necessarily, it is a budgeting tool. So one of the things that I like about Mint is after you have like a couple months of, well, even at any point of having information, they create these fun charts for you and things like that. So you can see, and like they automatically categorize your expenses. So you can see, you know, what categories. I think in the beginning, it's a little bit more work because sometimes like I notice certain things they don't categorize correctly or in the way that I would categorize them. So I have to say like, oh, this place is always this, right? It's never this other thing that you've said. So sometimes you have to do that, but you can create these little rules for it pretty easily. And you can create budgets in there, which is nice. So you can say like, so I have a few things in there set up, for example, like, you know, my gas budget is this much in a month. And if I've gone over it, then they send me an email like unusual spending on gas. And it's like, oh, well, it's just, I just took a road trip. So yes, that makes sense, you know, or, you know, like, you know, groceries and stuff like that. So you can actually check on the app or on the web browser, you know, how you're doing against those points. So you can create, so yes, you can create budgets around specific areas or like specific individual categories or broader categories, depending on how you want to categorize it. Okay. So if your job doesn't have retirement or 401k, you can set up your own. And there'll be some resources in there tomorrow, but the easiest one to set up is a Roth IRA. You can do this. Some banks have these, but some of the big investing houses, if you will, that will do this that I recommend, or I recommend more, are Vanguard, Schwab, Ellevest. Those few are a really good starting point for getting those types of accounts set up. They're fiduciaries, and so I will introduce you to this word fiduciary, which is basically a company or an individual, so like a financial planner, you would want anybody that you work with to be a fiduciary or to hold themselves to the fiduciary standard. So what that basically means is that they are looking out for your best interest and not their own. So like some like investment bro might be like, oh, hey, like invest in these things, and like, they're going to push you to the things that give them the biggest commission, right? So so with these fiduciaries, they do what's in your best interest and not what's in their best interest. Another thing you might hear that sounds similar but is actually different is someone who will work to do something that is suitable for you, which is not necessarily the same as what is in your best interest. So the companies that I just recommended, Vanguard, Schwab, and Ellevest, are all fiduciary companies. And again, there'll be some information in the resources I send out tomorrow about that.
You know about Wells Fargo?
Oh, I can't hear you very well, Kate, sorry.
I don't know where my microphone is.
Okay, you can type it if it's easier because I don't hear you very well, sorry. Wells Fargo. What about Wells Fargo? Wells Fargo, I don't 100% know for sure, but as a sort of standard bank, they are most likely not who you want to set that account up with. They might also not have as many options for you. So that, you know, I don't want to give you like too specific of advice because that's not really my area of expertise. And I'm also like not really qualified to tell you that, but I would say probably not Wells Fargo. That is my personal opinion.
Okay.
Sylvia or Jeff, any questions from you? Otherwise, I'll go to the submitted questions I got online. through the magic of the internet. All right. Well, if they, oh, okay, Sylvia, I covered the investment questions you had. Great. So one of the other things that came up were, so Kate, I know you mentioned like interest in saving for a home potentially or down payment. And because I came up with a couple people, I just want to talk a little bit more about that. So it's like the American dream to own your own home and all of that. And I think that's great. I don't have personal problem with that. However, one of the areas to navigate right now because of what I mentioned earlier, you know, like cities in particular being increasingly more expensive, property being increasingly more expensive, and the income that we make not proportionally like rising with that necessarily, it can mean that investing in a home, and I am saying investing here very intentionally, is not always in your best interest. It does depend. So partially it depends on how long you intend to be in that home. The sort of rule of thumb on this is if you're going to be in that home for fewer than 4 or 5 years, it may not be worthwhile to purchase a home. Again, it depends. Like if you're taking that house and you got a really good deal on it and you're going to fix it up and you know for sure you're going to be able to turn that investment around, that's great. But real estate is not always the sure thing that it has been in the past. And so for a lot of us who are in our 20s and 30s, I think a lot of our parents have said that real estate is a really great investment, but that's not always the case unless you live in an area that is steadily climbing and it's not going to have this big burst, which a lot of cities do eventually have, but that's not, I don't know what the real estate situation is, everywhere. And there's certainly like a lot of information about investing in real estate out in the world it's not my area, but yeah, so from that perspective, think about how long you intend to be in a place. The other thing that you can really look into is what's the point of it for you? So one of the things I always think is so important, especially with really big investments like grad school or buying a home or things like that, is knowing why you're doing it. And in some situations, renting is prohibitively expensive, and it could be actually cheaper to make a mortgage payment. That is sometimes the case. But know why you want to do that, because obviously, there's benefits to renting that you don't get with owning a home. You have to handle all the maintenance yourself and things of that nature. Even if you have to hire someone to do it, you still have to be the boss of that situation. And as someone who's been in that home owning situation the past several years, it's very frustrating not just be able to call the super or the landlord to deal with a problem. So having to deal with that all ourselves, but it's also empowering. So, I think you have to decide why you're doing it, and what's in it for you in that sense. So, and then just in terms of like saving for a down payment, I mean, you would make it one of these saving priorities like you have, that I've laid out in the savings section. So start doing research, like even if it feels early, and maybe you don't 100% know where you want to live, what city, what neighborhood, things like that. Just start doing a little bit of research around like, what's it even cost? How much do I need to put down? I mean, like, I think the rule of thumb around down payments for a home or condo or things like that are 20%. In some cities, in some areas, it might be more or it might be less. Sometimes you can qualify for different kinds of loans that would require you to put less down. But, it's not too early to start doing homework on that because it is such a big investment. And even though things change, the foundations of how this works are not going to change dramatically in the next handful of years. And you can just start thinking about like, well, if I need 20% for a down payment, and what's that going to look like? And how can I start working towards that now? because that might be a significant sum of money. And so having the time to start saving for that is really great. I felt like I was going to say one more thing about that, but I don't remember now. So, and similarly, saving for retirement was another thing that came up, or, investing in retirement. So a rule of thumb in terms of how much to invest is generally considered between 10 to 15% of your income should be going towards your retirement each year. Now, it does depend a little bit on your age and your income level, but I think that's a really super good way to look at it, because I think a lot of us don't put that much money towards our retirement accounts, and the younger you are, the more this compound interest and compound investing really works in your favor, and the difference is dramatic. In terms of Jake started saving when he was, putting money towards retirement, when he was 25 years old, and, his friend started putting money away when he was 30, and they put away the same amount. And, Jake has like millions more dollars in retirement than the other guy does. So this compounding thing is real. So even if you only put a little bit, but you do it regularly, that's really helpful. And the other thing that kind of goes along with all of this is lifestyle creep. So sometimes called lifestyle inflation. So sometimes as we make more money, we want to spend more money. It's like, oh, well, finally I can get the nicer car, the nicer home, or the, nicer clothes, and, all these kinds of things. Or it's like, oh, I can treat everybody to dinner, and all this stuff. And I think that the heart reason is good there, but we need to be really careful with people who, not all people, but some of the people who've been really successful in, being able to have all this money have been people who have been able to keep their same lifestyle, no matter how much more money they get. So once you get to a point where it's like, okay, I'm happy, I can be happy in this amount of square footage with this kind of car, with this and this and this. I don't have to have everything new. I can still do nice things like take vacations or whatever. But I am not going to just spend as much more money as I'm making each year just because my income has gone up. And this is where being really real about yourself, about what your values and priorities really are, and thinking about what your goals are and vision for yourself in the future, whether that is 5 years from now, 20 years from now, whatever that is, and use that vision as a compass for how you make your decisions, especially as your income shifts, or when you're thinking about making big financial decisions. What else, y'all? Any more questions? We still got 3 more minutes. Oh no, Kate. Well, Kate, if you think of it, you're welcome to email me if you have another question. And that goes for you, Sylvia, and Jeff as well. So, basically, this is only the beginning. Every day is a new day to start. Wow, I sound so cheesy, but that's how I feel. I feel excited about it. So, what are you excited about? What can you do to make a change in your financial life? And it can be a small thing. It could be, well, I'm going to automate $5 going to my savings account each week, or, I'm going to set some goals for myself. The big thing is what can you commit to doing with consistency? And with money is always such a long game. It's not, rarely is it an immediate thing. So whatever you can start doing and do with consistency, that's only going to benefit you. So just be consistent. And so again, start now. It's not too late. It's not too soon. Just do something at all. So what you do from this point on matters. So yay, Kate, she signed up for Mint, nice work. She's on it. She's doing it right now. And Sylvia, I know she's got her Ally Bank account set up. She's got all her different accounts for different things. So yeah, so that's great. And also, you know, if you want to discuss anything further, I do offer free clarity calls. So we can just talk about anything that's on your mind in particular with your own specific situations or challenges. And I would be happy to talk to any of you further about any of this stuff. So, you know, I just, again, want to really applaud you for being here because, you know, you showed up, you're here, you're doing it, you're thinking about it, you're trying to make a change. And so for that, I'm so proud of you. Thank you for being here. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to just email me. I have some stuff coming to you tomorrow. So I've got, you'll have the link to this recording, a list of tools and resources, and a couple other little things. So again, if you have any questions, let me know. And I bid you an awesome evening and good rest of your week, and happy Thanksgiving and all of those wonderful things.